right, good evening all. We might get started sooner rather than later. I'm sure you have much more exciting things to be doing other than sitting here, but hopefully during the next, probably shouldn't take us any more than an hour, we will give you lots of information for your students on their Year 10 into Year 11 transition. So before we do, we'll just have our acknowledgement of country.
We acknowledge the Turrbal and Yagara peoples as the First Nation owners of the land where Corinda now stands. For thousands of years, the Turrbal and Yagara people have gathered, sharing their knowledge and their stories. We pay respects to elders, laws, customs and creation stories as we gather on the banks of the Benawara. We recognise that the land where Corinda now stands has always been a place of teaching and learning. We acknowledge the important role Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders play in our community.
Thank you, Ms Black. It's great to see so many people here. Okay, so it's probably a good idea if I start by introducing myself. On the first slide here is the whole senior schooling team. I think we've got that slide at the end also. So many people that can work with your student in so many different ways to help them achieve the pathway that is perfect for them. So we have here tonight Miss Smith, Carrie-Anne Smith, our Deputy Principal Senior Schooling down the back there. I'm Natalie Vosnax, Head of Department Senior Schooling. We've got Miss Doolan, who you will hear from later. Karina, she is Head of Department of Vet. We've got Katie Fairbanks here in the beautiful blue suit. She will be talking to you about work experience and such things. Miss Black, who did our acknowledgement of country, is our Year 10 Guidance Officer. Mr Batty unfortunately couldn't be with us this evening. He's our Deputy Principal for Year 10, and we have Mr Pilkington over at the side, who is your Dean of Students. So a huge array of people that can support your students in lots of different ways. So as I said, I'm Natalie Vosnax, Head of Senior Schooling, and we're going to talk about a few different things tonight. As I said before, sorry, I'll just go back one. As I said before, we're all here about your students' journey from Year 10 into Year 11. And it's a pretty a pivotal time, I suppose, in their education, going from their junior studies into those senior studies that will help them to transition into their work life or career or traineeship or university or whatever it is that they go on to choose to do. So I suppose what we're here to do tonight is to equip you with enough information to help your student make really informed choices about the subjects that they choose for the career that they potentially want. Now, we also understand that not everyone at this age knows what they want to do right now. Some of us still don't really know what we want to do, and that's okay. So we will talk through ways that you can encourage your student, even if they don't know exactly what they want to do yet, ways of choosing their subjects that will help their pathway. So the first thing that I would like to talk to you about tonight is the Queensland Certificate of Education. So you might hear the term thrown around regularly, the QCE. Anyone who comes down to senior schooling land will hear us talking about the QCE all the time. So for our students here at Corinda State High School, the QCE is, I suppose, basically the baseline for everyone. All of our students, and we've got a proud history over the last, I don't even know how many years, 10 years plus, of achieving 100% QCE for all of our students who graduate here at Corinda. Now, the importance of that is that the QCE, the Queensland Certificate of Education, is your students' evidence of completing their senior studies, and it's evidence that they've completed successfully. So some students don't understand, and don't worry, we school them correctly. They think that they can just sort of come to school every day until the end of Year 12 and they'll get a certificate saying, good on you, you came to school every day. Unfortunately, they have to earn that certificate. And so we're going to go through in the next few slides what they need to do to be awarded their Queensland Certificate of Education upon graduation from Year 12. So there are 4 categories that contribute to the Queensland Certificate of Education. So your student will need to do a certain amount of learning, and don't worry, we cover that thoroughly. They choose 6 subjects, plus we get them to do a few other things along the way, so they will have enough credits if they are able to achieve in most of those subjects successfully. They need a set pattern. Now, what that means, so that's the blue one on the side, what that means is your student needs to study some subjects right from the beginning of Year 11 to the end of Year 12. We do allow, under certain circumstances, for your students to change subjects if they need to, but we only allow a limited number of changes because they need to be able to achieve that consistency of education in that set pattern. So 12 of their 20 QCE points have to come from studies that they have studied from beginning to end. So as you can imagine, if they chop and change all over the place and swap subjects all the time, we don't get that consistency of education. So down the bottom here, we've got the set pattern. So they will be awarded a QCE point for every unit of work that they complete satisfactorily. Now, the subjects that your students choose, or most of the subjects your students choose in Years 11 and 12, have 4 units of work across Year 11 and 12. So roughly 2 units in Year 11 and then 2 in Year 12. And so for each subject, there's a maximum of 4 QCE points that they could be awarded. And so every unit of work they pass, they will gain a QCE point for that. So that's how they get the QCE point. If they do a unit of work and they aren't satisfactory in that unit of work, they are not awarded that QCE point. But as you can see up there in the top left, 20 QCE points overall. Your students will choose 6 subjects. So if there's 4 QCE points per subject, that gives them a total of 24 potential points starting out. Plus, as you know, your students are currently undertaking their Certificate 2 in active volunteering, and that will actually give them an additional 4 points. So we basically set them up with a potential of about 28 points. So we find that if they drop a QCE point here or there along the way, particularly at the beginning of Year 11, it's a really big transition for students. And I don't want you to be worried or shocked if you see that your student has a little bit of a dip in their results. It's very normal. And so if they lose a QCE point along the way, it's not the end of the world. And basically, it's our job in the senior schooling team to manage that situation, and we check very regularly how each student is progressing to make sure that they will meet all of the requirements for their QCE. And don't worry, you'll hear from me if they're not. So the last one is that they need to meet some literacy and numeracy requirements, which for most students is not an additional requirement. They will get their literacy and numeracy requirements met just by passing a unit of English at any level and a unit of maths at any level. In the event that your student is struggling with English or mathematics and they do fail a couple of units, then we do have backups and we can put them through a literacy short course or a numeracy short course to help them through that. And again, we will make sure that we're monitoring all of that in the background as your student progresses through their senior studies. Okay, so this, I don't expect you to read the whole slide, obviously. Just to let you know that, as I said, for most of the QCEA, so that's the Queensland Curriculum and Assessment Authority, so they are the ones that set all of the senior syllabuses and monitor the progress of all of the students. All of the subjects that they offer, whether they're general or applied or extension subjects, which we'll go through what that means in a minute, they'll get up to 4 points for each of those. In addition, if your student studies any qualifications, any VET qualifications, they will probably get some extra points as well. So the core points can come from a QCEA subject or a Cert 2 qualification, a Cert 3 qualification or a Cert 4, or if they're doing a school-based apprenticeship or a traineeship or something like that. Okay, where do we get other points from? So other QCE points can come from things like, so that literacy short course and that numeracy short course that I spoke about before, if your student needs to do that. If they do any Certificate 1 qualifications, they will get QCE points for those, but they won't count towards their core number of QCE points. And then there's also a complementary category. So we'll have Ms Doolan speaking later about the VET opportunities that students have at school, and one of those is, for example, the Diploma of Business. Now, the diploma level is considered a too higher level qualification to contribute to core points. So they get up to 8 points for the diploma, which contributes to their QCE, but not to the core points. It's a little bit complicated, but it's literally my job to make sure that it's all sorted out for your students. So I'm just giving you this information, but please rest assured that we have got all of the monitoring processes going on in the background and no one is going to slip through the cracks. Okay, so that's just some extra requirements if they don't meet the literacy and numeracy, but as I said, we've got that covered anyway. Okay, so I suppose what most of you are here to hear about and what your students will be doing over the next couple of months is determining their senior pathway. So there are lots of things to consider when we're going to talk about your students' pathway, both at school and beyond. So when we start the planning process and your students have been doing their career education modules on a Thursday period 1 for this term, we start looking at things like their strengths, their interests, their values, and all of those things that help to define or help the student to understand what kind of person they are, how they work, what they enjoy doing, and what they're good at. They have spent some time on the My Futures website, which hopefully has helped them to start to refine and narrow down some potential industries or career fields that they might be interested in. So it's really important that your student, and I'm sure that you will encourage them to, is to choose a pathway that they enjoy and hopefully that they are good at. You know, I've seen many students come through that are struggling through with this pathway that, you know, someone said, the neighbour down the road said that this would be a good idea for me to do, but they're not enjoying it. And so it's really difficult for a student to achieve in a situation where they are not following their interests and their values. Okay, so the first question, after we discover what our interests are and our values are and what we think we're good at, the next thing would be for the student to ask themselves, do I need to be ATAR eligible? So basically, they would need to be ATAR eligible if they are wanting to go on to university study. You don't have to have an ATAR to go on to university. There are other ways to gain entry into university without an ATAR score, but generally that would be the starting place. So if they wanted to go on to university to study something, we would try and set them up with a senior subject portfolio, which includes subjects that will gain them an ATAR score. So as we know, it's only for entry into university. It's an overall student's overall position compared to all of the students in the state. It's a 2,000 point scale. Top one is 99.95. And of course, it's recognised throughout Australia. So yeah, so that would be the first place. Do they need an ATAR or do they not? Once we've decided on that, then we can start thinking about what types of subjects to study. So even before we get to look at what actual subjects we're going to study, we need to look at the type of subjects. Now, what I mean by that is that the QCEE offer generally 2 different types of subjects. One type is called a general subject, and they are those academic subjects, the ones that we all kind of know about, you know, your chemistry and your history and your accounting and biology and maths methods and all of those academic subjects. Those general subjects are the ones that will contribute towards an ATAR score. Right. So if your student is looking for an ATAR score, then they will be wanting to choose general type subjects. The other subjects that they offer are applied subjects, and as the term implies, they are more hands-on subjects, they are less academic in nature and more practical in nature, and they can contribute to an ATAR score, but generally a student would only study 1, maybe 2 of those if they're going on an ATAR pathway. If they've decided that they would not like to get an ATAR, or they don't need an ATAR, or that that's just too much for them, then really they can choose any combination of general or applied or VET qualifications to do across their senior years. So the only restrictions really are, if the student wants to be ATAR eligible, we need probably 5 general subjects. Now, they will be eligible if they only study 4 general subjects, but the way I describe it to our students is that it's a little bit of a weaker ATAR pathway. They don't have the potential to get as higher ATAR as they could, as if they were studying 5 general subjects. Usually, depending, of course, on how they do in those subjects and what subjects they've chosen. So hopefully that makes sense. We will hang around at the end if you've got any questions, because I know it's all a little bit complicated. Okay, so after we've decided what our strengths and weaknesses are, or what we're interested in and what our values are, and then whether we need an ATAR or not, we've got a few other decisions to make. But before we do that, let's just talk about these subjects. One subject that I didn't talk about, or one subject type I didn't talk about, was essential subjects. An essential subject, I suppose, is similar to an applied subject in that it is a more practical-based subject, and they are only for English and maths. So we have essential English and essential maths. So if your student is not able to achieve at a level where they can do general maths or maths methods or general English or literature, then they can choose an essential maths or an essential English. And then, of course, the VET qualifications that we were talking about. So just a little bit more information about those subjects to help your student make up their mind whether those subjects are for them or not. As I said earlier, every subject that they choose, whether it is a general subject or an applied subject, will consist of 4 units of work across years 11 and 12. Now, units 1 and 2 that they will study in year 11 are individual units of work. Okay, and so they get assessed in that unit of work. If they pass, if they are satisfactory, they gain their QCE point and they move on to Unit 2. Similarly, Unit 2 is an individual unit of work. They get assessed, they get their QCE point or not, and move on to Units 3 and 4. Now, when they get to Unit 3 and 4, this is what I tell the students is the high stakes point in time, moving from Unit 2 to 3 and 4, because Units 3 and 4, according to the QCEE, come as a pair. So after you've finished Unit 2, if you want to make any subject changes then it's possible. But as soon as we start Units 3 and 4, your students are pretty much locked into those subjects until the end of Year 12. And the reason is that the subjects go across all of Year 12, and for some subjects they're assessed on all of the work in Units 3 and 4 at the end of Year 12. And also the QCE points come as a pair also. So it's pretty, as I said, high stakes at this time, and the QCE points from that point on, from Units 3 and 4 onwards, are double or nothing. This is how I like to describe it to the students. So that means that they either get both QCE points for Units 3 and 4 for that subject overall, or they don't get any. Now, it doesn't matter if they fail a particular assessment over the whole course, as long as across the entire course they get enough marks to be awarded a satisfactory in that subject, and then they'll get the 2 QCE points. So I suppose why I'm giving you that information is so that your students can understand that Year 11 is a little bit of a trial period. We hope that they are able to choose the subjects that they will remain in until the end of Year 12, because of course it's disruptive for them to choose to change subjects, and it's disruptive for the class and the teacher, and really then they've missed out on a bit of content from the subject they're moving out of, and for the subject they're moving into, and so on. So we hope that students choose the correct subjects to start off with, but we know they're teenagers and they will change their mind, and we are totally on board with that. We understand that. They also might change their career pathway, and we are absolutely prepared to support that as well. So basically those Units 1 and 2 are kind of a trial period to make sure that they're in the right subjects, for them to get settled in those subjects, to understand what's required of them in terms of the workload and in terms of the assessment, so that when they hit Units 3 and 4, they know what they're doing and they're ready to go. All right, so it's just an important bit of information so that, we can get all of those kinks ironed out in Units 1 and 2 next year. Okay, it's a bit of a controversial topic. Subject scaling comes up, and you probably have heard of it. Maybe your students have even started to talk to you about it. Subject scaling is something that occurs at the end of Year 12 when your students have achieved their marks or result for their subjects. I suppose it's a bit like saying, trying to compare the level of difficulty and the academic integrity of each of those courses and trying to make them a little bit even, I suppose, is the best way to describe it. So if you're doing a really highly academic difficult subject like specialist maths, as opposed to a subject that's, I suppose, considered a little bit easier academically, then that scaling helps to kind of balance that out. Now, it's a really involved process. I actually don't really completely understand how it works. I know it's an iterative process that they do once they get all of the results for all of the students in Year 12. But I suppose my point mainly is that unless your student is aiming to get a 99.9 or 99.95, yes, then in those situations we would probably be talking about a particular set of subjects that will allow them to get that ATAR score. But generally, your student will achieve best in those subjects that they enjoy and in the subjects that they are good at. So the scaling discussion comes up all the time, and yes, it's a valid discussion to have, but what's more important is that your student is enjoying their studies and that they're good at it and that they want to come to school every day because they are they are on the pathway that they want to do, rather than choosing subjects just because they scale well. All right. If you've got any more questions about that at any point in time, please feel free to ask. Just be really careful about those, the online sort of ATAR calculators and things like that. I'm just not sure about the integrity of some of those. So, yeah, probably best to come and talk to the senior schooling team at any point. Okay, just another piece of information to help decide about whether a general subject or an applied subject is for your student. So first of all, you can see there that a general subject has all internal assessments. In fact, all of our subjects in Year 11, the assessments are set by us and marked by us and moderated by us and all that kind of thing. In Year 12, or in Units 3 and 4 more specifically, for a general subject, so that's those academic subjects, they will have 3 internal assessments and 1 external assessment. And so the marks from all of those 3 internal assessments and their external assessment will add up to 100 marks, and that will be their result for that subject out of 100 for Units 3 and 4. Now, just a note as well when you're choosing subjects. Any maths or science subject that your student chooses that is at a general level will have a 50% weighted exam at the end of Year 12 in the external exams. So if your student is the type of student that just hates doing exams and they just freeze up and they don't do very well, that might be worth considering when you're doing your subject selections. If they're better at assignments and working through projects and folios and that kind of thing, maybe a different sort of maths, non-maths science path might be better. So just something to consider. The essential subjects have 3 internal assessments and 1 CIA, that's called a common internal assessment. That was for, remember, those maths and English essential subjects. They do 1 assessment that is set by the Queensland Curriculum and Assessment Authority, just as a, I suppose, as a quality assurance measure. For the applied subjects, all of those assessments are set and marked internally. For a VET qualification, that goes on a continuous basis. They're always doing little projects and tasks and answering questions to work towards their competencies. All right, you're nearly done listening to me, hopefully. So I just wanted to just show you this visual so that you understand what your students', I suppose, timetable and what it's going to look like for the next couple of years. So the yellow right at the beginning here in Term 1 and half of Term 2 in Year 11 is when they will study Unit 1. Okay, so we've got to be prepared from after year 10 onwards that terms and semesters just kind of don't really line up anymore. All right, so we're going a bit rogue. So all of term 1, half of it term 2 is unit 1. Then at the middle of term 2 in year 11, they switch over to unit 2 and they study that till the end of term 3. So that means that we have to get all of those, any subject changes and all of those settling in things happening by the end of term 3 in year 11. So effectively, your students will start their year 12 studies, so to speak, in term 4 of year 11. So in term 4 of next year. And for many subjects, they will have done their first internal assessment before they leave at the end of year 11, and then do the remaining 3 when they come back. Not for all subjects, but for some. So, yep, you can see the term 4 there is in green. That's unit 3. Unit 3 follows into unit 1, and most of the assessment happens, or some of the assessment happens early in term 2 of year 12. Then we launch into unit 4. Now, it's a bit ambiguous there because they will have assessments earlier than what is indicated there for unit 4, and then there will be a lot of external exam preparation. So I would say about halfway or 3/4 of the way through term 3, your student will be finished the learnings, the content for unit 4, and they will launch into external exam preparation. And so the red part there is when the external exams are scheduled to happen each year from week 3 or 4 in term 4.
That's fine.
That's a long way ahead though. All right, so how does your student then choose the correct subject? So they know what they're interested in, they know their values, they know if they want to be ATAR eligible or not. How do they choose the correct subjects? So as I said before, so important that they enjoy the subjects that they're studying. Subjects that they are good at or traditionally have been good at. Subjects that align with their future career. So for example, if they want to be an accountant, maybe they should study accounting, or if they want to be an engineer, they would do engineering. They don't always have to study every subject that leads them towards their future career. They can study subjects that are just of interest to them, of course, but usually they would study subjects that align with what they're going to do post-school. And then also subjects that may be prerequisites for their tertiary courses. So if they have a particular course in mind at a particular university, we encourage them to start investigating and researching those things to see if there's specific subjects they need to study to meet prerequisites. A lot of university courses have a general level English that they need to study. Some engineering or maths science-based ones may have a maths or a science that they need to study as well. So just checking off all of those things to make sure that your student has chosen the correct subjects. Yeah. So the resources that we have for you, we are about to publish, hopefully tomorrow or early next week, your cohort's senior subject selection handbook. So that handbook has every bit of information about every subject that we offer here at school, including all of the VET qualifications that we offer. We also have developed and have started to develop, this year, some subject videos. Now we will link the handbook and the subject videos, or we'll link the handbook on the website, and your students will have access to the subject videos in class time when they're doing their career education. Their TFT teachers will also have copies of that in the room for them to look at. They can also access the Year 10 QTAC guide. Now, of course, there will be the 2028 year going into university, and we will update that as soon as we get it. So that's another vital piece of information for those prerequisites. Then also our own subject selection prerequisites. So we understand as educators that some students really want to be a rocket scientist, but maybe they're not quite capable of being a rocket scientist yet. So what we try and do is put some prerequisites in place to give your students and yourself an indication of what level they need to be achieving at in Year 10 for them to be successful in Year 11 and 12. Does that make sense? So we've shown this to your students, and it will be in their handbook as well. So it's important that they are working really hard this term to get the required results they need to get into the subjects that they would like to get into. We will be looking in week 2 of term 3, When we do your student set plan interview, we'll be looking at their results from semester 1. Now, there will be opportunity to, for them to improve their results and so on, but that gives you an idea of a starting point. Okay. Luckily, you've heard the end of me now. I'm going to hand over now to Miss Doolan, and she's going to talk about all things vocational education and training, but I will still be here at the end if anyone has any questions. Miss Doolan.
Thank you. Good evening. So, I'm going to talk to you about all of our VET subjects here. VET is vocational education and training. It is learning that's specifically designed, learning for work. So there's a lot of practical components involved in studying a VET qualification. They're developed by specific industries. So they're really relevant, they're current, they're constantly updated, and they train students with the skills and the knowledge to further themselves in that industry once they've got that qualification. So a lot of our students really love getting to year 11 and 12 and getting to do a little bit more practical work that's really specifically focused on where they want to take their career after school. So typically, like, our students will use VET to move into an apprenticeship or traineeship after school. They might use it to go directly into employment or complete further VET studies. With the further VET studies, any VET qualification they're awarded at school, it's a nationally recognised qualification, so they hold that for their life. If they go to do further VET studies in that same industry, they may even get some credit transfer from that lower level that they studied at school, and so they don't have to continue and do that whole qual post-school. And a lot of our students actually use this now as an alternate entry into university rather than relying on an ATAR. So some universities and some of their bachelor degrees will allow a Certificate 3 or higher as an entryway into university. So some of our students that are on that edge of, is it the right time for me to do 5 or 6 really heavy general academic study loads? Maybe I'm not at that point in my learning, but I want to keep a university pathway option open after school. They will choose a Cert 3 or higher qualification with the knowledge that they can't get into every uni and every degree with that qual, but more and more unis are giving some more options around that entry. So that is something also to think about with studying a VET qual. And another thing, another reason it's not a pathway, but a lot of our students that are maybe doing an ATAR pathway, their 6th subject, they might choose a VET qualification because it's a passion and interest subject. And it breaks up that theory, the constant theory, having 6 heavy subjects, and they get to do a bit more practical and they get that qual, and it might be that backup in case that ATAR falls down and other factors influence that with stress, and they know going into that external exam, they've got that backup university option to some degrees. Now, with studying VET, I guess the 2 main things that I want to talk to you today about are around the costs and where the students study them. I'm going to refer to VETIS funding tonight. If you are in the VET world, you may be aware there's some changes happening with that funding for school students. So VETIS stands for Vet in Schools. They're looking at calling it a career ready program next year. In terms of how that's actually going to affect what subjects your student can choose and how many qualifications they're funded for, we don't anticipate that will really change much. So I'm going to talk to you with the current model that we think will still be applicable for your students, but come set planning, the government should have moved past that draft stage and we have a lot more solid information around that. But with the VETIS funding currently, and like I said, the new funding model, students will be covered by the Australian government to study 1 qualification that falls in that VETIS list. Those qualifications are always only at a Cert 1 or a Cert 2 level. And only certain courses are eligible that the government deems skills needed in that industry. So one way to study a VET qual is that it's covered by the government and it's effectively free for your student. You can only choose one. Once you choose one and you use that funding, you can't go back and have another go at that same funding. Another way is if you have an RTO, so a registered training organisation that delivers a vet qual. So we are also RTO, like we're delivering that certificate to inactive volunteering to your students. We don't charge you VETAS funding or extra fees like that, but we have a lot of vet qualifications that are delivered by other RTOs, and you probably have all heard of TAFE, that's a big example. There are some extra fees that would be due to that external RTO. So you would pay directly to the RTO or through our school. Or, like I said before, we are an RTO and we deliver vet qualifications, so there's no additional large fees there, just your standard classroom resources. With those three ways, you can study a vet course in terms of the cost. Either the government funds it for you, you pay for it, or we deliver it for you effectively for free. You can either study that in our school timetable, depending on the course, or the student can travel to that external location and study it, for example, 1 day a week. So they're all really different, and I was going to put on the screen here for you some two examples from our subject selection handbook. So about 3/4 of the way through is when the vet pages start. Any subject, any vet qualification that's listed and has a whole page is something that's delivered within our school timetable. And so we have a lot more information there for you. I've kind of highlighted some of the key things to look for there. In that top left box will tell you how long the course goes for. Some vet qualifications only go for 1 year, so students do that in year 11, and then in year 12 they're in a study line because they've finished one of their 6 subjects already. Then in the circle I've circled, that's the symbol to show who the RTO is. So for our Cert 2 in furniture making pathways, we own that qualification and we deliver that to our students. So the only cost, which I've identified at the bottom there, and I know it's too small for you to see these specific ones, I just want to highlight where to really have a look in the book. We are only charging students the materials required to deliver that qual at our school, so there's no extra funding there. But compared to the Cert 3 in fitness, that's delivered currently by Binnacle. Our teachers at our school are trained to deliver that qualification on behalf of Binnacle. It's in our school timetable, and that's listed in the box on the top left. It goes for 2 years. The cost for that is $500 approximately, and so to get a Certificate 3 for $500, if you're in the vet world, you'd realise that's really quite cheap, and that's because Binnacle, they're not outsourcing, I guess, trainers to deliver that. We are providing the trainers for them, so it's that partnership we have with that RTO. So we have quite a few of them. Some of our external partnerships with RTOs that we have, most of them we are quite involved in the delivery. In recent years, we've been able to make some more connections where they are more student-led, and we supply a teacher 1 day a week to help supervise and support, but it really brings that cost down. So those students, and it is outlined in the information on there. For example, like our Certificate 4 in Justice Studies and our Certificate 3 in Music, those qualifications are done more independently by the student, but they have access to a teacher at this school. And it really is just a way to bring down the cost for the student, and so the student doesn't also have to travel to that external location 1 day a week and miss class. So that's kind of the benefit we see out of those relationships, because we can't always meet the demands of an RTO to be the trainer to completely deliver that qualification. So I just encourage you, if you are thinking about doing a vet qualification, having a look, really engaging with the subject selection handbook. About 3/4 of the way through are all the vet pages, and like I said, if it's listed as a whole page, in some capacity it's delivered on site at Corinda. Otherwise, we have many different qualifications that our students study off-site. So the most common one is TAFE, that you would have heard of, but students bring, I'll go back to that page then while I'm on this train of thought. Our most common one is TAFE. It's really easy to see that information online with what you can study at school as a school student. Otherwise, we always have students bringing, every year a student will bring a qualification at an external RTO that we might not have heard of, and we go, great, okay, we look it up, we make sure that we're all on the same page the student is enrolling in something appropriate, and then we support that and they go off 1 day a week and study that qual. So if there's something that, it's not in our subject selection handbook, so it's not offered on site at Corinda, and then you don't see it at TAFE as an option to study, or it might be at TAFE but another RTO that your student would prefer to study it at, bring that to us at Set Planning and we will look into it and we will support, if we can, you pursuing and enrolling in that qual. So if your student is interested in studying a vet course off-site, they would go out 1 day per week. These courses range from 1 year to 2 years, so every course is different. The vet quals do, like the ones we have on our timetable, contribute to a QCE and possibly an ATAR if it's a Cert 3 or higher, and also, like I said before, that backup uni entry potentially. We say to students, if you are going to go down that path, we love it, it's exciting, there's so many benefits you're meeting and engaging with industry and making those connections, but we need you to manage your enrolment, attendance and your study load there. We're here to support you. Absolutely, and we say come and see us, we will help you, but effectively that's kind of some independence there that the student takes on and agrees to. Before you apply for one of these courses, we need to approve that at the set planning process, or you might find that course after set planning and you can still come to us and apply for that. But we want to have a conversation with you and just check that this is a good idea. Some of these courses will attract VETIS funding, so that one, the Cert 1 or Cert 2 courses where you just get one go at that funding. A lot of them are at TAFE, so that's an option as well. That's it. The last thing I was going to touch on is a school-based apprenticeship or traineeship. So it is doing the theory qualification, a Cert 3, but they're doing it in a work-based environment and they are an employee. So they go out 1 day a week to the place of employment and they're actually paid. So some workplaces will give them time to do the theory component of the Cert 3, so there's still quite a significant theory load there. Others, every workplace is different and every industry is different, so a lot of the time they are doing all that theory in their own time. But yeah, they are working in that industry and they're getting skills in that industry, and it's a really great opportunity. If they want to go down a traineeship path, that's for industries that don't require a trade qualification. So our common ones are business, retail and hospitality. They do a Cert 3 in one of these and they will be awarded that qualification by the end of year 12. They need to do 750 hours, which comes to about 100 days of work if you do an 8-hour day with a 30-minute lunch break. And students often say, that doesn't sound like that many. It kind of is when you break down that you're only going out 1 day a week per term, and there's 4 terms, and year 12 you kind of finish at the end of term 3, as you've seen. So I would be saying to students, you'd be doing some work in the holidays. You are getting paid and they usually love it, it's fine. But we look at the school-based traineeships starting pretty early on in year 11, because otherwise they really struggle to meet that deadline of the 750 hours. The difference with the school-based apprenticeship is most of our students that are able to secure one of them, they typically start in year 12. They might have done the Cert 2 qualification in year 11, or at least started that. And then they're a little bit older and they manage to find an employer who's willing to take them on as a school-based apprentice. They can start it in year 11 as well. They start that while they're at school, 1 day a week, and then once they finish school, there's an assumption they would transition into full-time apprentice work there. So it takes some time off their apprentice. They love it. They get out into the workforce a little bit earlier. I wish we could have more school-based trainees and apprentices. It's often the issue is finding an employer. So we try and work with the student to try and secure some of those positions, but it's a little bit harder than applying to TAFE or university in terms of you can't just apply and get a position. So it's about finding an employer. That's me basically done. Look, it's I think the VET pathway is a very unique pathway in times for students. So if you have any specific questions leading up to set plan you want to discuss, please come see me tonight after this, or you can email me, or we say to the students you can pop in at any time to senior schooling and ask those individual questions. But I will pass over to Ms. Black now.
Okay, 22.
Hi folks, so my name's Ashley Black. I am one of our guidance officers and I work with years 8, 10 and 12. So I will be with you students and parents of your young people from now until the time that they graduate. I've just got a couple of slides to share with you this evening. There I am, highlighted in orange, and yet another acronym to share with you. So I just wanted to talk with you briefly around the access arrangements and reasonable adjustments, or the ATAR process. So this is something that is stipulated by the QCEE, so the Queensland Curriculum and Assessment Authority, that you heard Natalie speak about earlier, and then we as schools implement that into our assessment policy. The purpose of ATAR provisions is to ensure that all of our young people, regardless of what their support needs might be, can participate in assessment on the same basis as their peers. And there are two types of ATAR, I suppose, that can be provided to support students. The first of which are ongoing provisions. So the QCEE and we, of course, at Corinda recognise that there are existing and chronic conditions that are in the 4 categories up there: cognitive, physical, sensory and social emotional, which might mean that young people need some additional supports when they are engaging with either their assignments or their exams in order to reduce some of the barriers that they might be experiencing. The second category is illness and misadventure. That's essentially unforeseen circumstances whereby a student might become unwell or have an extenuating circumstance that means they miss an exam or need an extension to a piece of assessment. It does become a little stricter, I suppose, would be the best word to use, coming into year 11 and 12, because we do have to act in accordance with QCEE's guidelines and ensure that we have the adequate evidence for what adjustment might be required. So things are a little bit flexible this year in year 10. We are able to make some more independent decisions aside from QCEE, but when we move into senior school, just, I guess, be aware that it does become a little bit stricter. So the QCEE does also stipulate ineligibility for ATAR provisions. So there are a list of reasons where they would say this is not a reasonable excuse, I suppose, to miss an exam or to request an extension on an item of assessment. So unfamiliarity with the English language, however, there are other supports around that. That does seem like quite a harsh line, but that does not mean that there aren't supports in place whereby if a young person has English as an additional language, there are certainly supports for that in place around their assessment. Of course, teacher absences and other difficulties we would manage as a school. Matters that the student could have avoided, so for example, if they've misread an exam timetable or misread instructions. Timetable clashes would not be something that a student would be expected to manage. That's something that we do at a school level. And much the same as the last one around matters that the school could have avoided. Of course, we have processes in place for that. The second last dot point is probably one that we come across most commonly, is matters of the students or parents and carers' own choosing. For example, family holidays. So QCEE across 11 and 12 outlined that that is not a reason for missing an exam or being able to request an assessment extension. However, if in year 11 and 12 there is something that you feel is coming up, please reach out as early as possible and we will do what we can to manage that situation. But as an example, we couldn't have a student who is going on holiday in senior sit an exam early because it does compromise the integrity of the task. But we always encourage you to reach out if you feel for whatever reason your young person might be missing an exam or need an extension, so that we can work with you in alignment with our assessment policy and QCEE. Sporting events is also up there. However, the exception to that rule is if your young person is competing, if they're in representative sport and they're competing at a state level event or a national level event that is endorsed by the school, then we can work that into the ARA process. So in terms of applications for having these adjustments, it won't be applicable to every young person, but it may become applicable to some, and there may be some of you sitting in the room currently who do have existing provisions in Year 10. So we can use the existing personalised learning plan that a young person might have, in addition to documentation completed by a registered medical professional, as you can see the list up there. And then there is also, as we move through Year 11 into Year 12, a medical report that QCEE requests in order to continue approving those ongoing provisions. So what I mean by ongoing provisions would be something that a young person would access consistently for every item of assessment. For example, they might require noise-cancelling headphones during an exam, they might require a scribe, or they might require rest breaks. There are a list of possible adjustments that can be applied for, and we look at what the barriers to their learning are based on their condition, as well as what's recommended by their health professional and what they have already been accessing at school that has been beneficial to them. So missed exams and extensions to assignments. So the applications for those slightly differ in Year 11 and 12, but the most important thing is that we do require evidence whenever we are looking to approve an extension or when a young person misses an exam. So medical certificate or other supporting documentation, because we acknowledge that not every absence is for medical reasons. There may be other reasons such as legal proceedings, bereavement, and other circumstances which may require a student to miss an assessment. So in Year 10 currently, you may be familiar that the rescheduled exams take place after school with Mrs. Pedley, our student engagement teacher. That's different in Year 11. If you do miss an exam, you will apply for the illness and misadventure through myself, and then Mrs. Vosnax reschedules those exams. So it is a little bit of a different process in Year 11 or 12, so that we can ensure that we're adhering to those QCEE guidelines. Any extension timeframes, those will be determined in consultation with the relevant head of department for that subject. So the approval process comes through myself, and then we consult with the relevant head of department and classroom teacher, so that we, as the subject experts, they know the task. We can also consider the circumstances, the number of lessons missed, and so there are a number of things that we take into consideration when looking to approve this process and approve the extensions. But my details will be at the end. Otherwise, my name again is Ashley Black. Some of you may already know me, but some of you won't be familiar with me. But please do reach out if you've got any questions in relation to any sort of supports or ongoing adjustments in assessment for senior. I will pass over now to Ms. Katie Fairbanks. Thanks, folks.
Thank you. Okay, lucky last. We did say that tonight's presentation was about an hour, so I've got 4 minutes. Let's see how we go. So I'm just up here just to talk about a few little things to finish off the presentation. The first thing I wanted to just quickly outline was the careers program and what we've been doing with your Year 10 students this term. So I'm not sure if they've been talking to you about this, but we encourage conversation around the dinner table, as this is a really important time in your young person's life when they're making some big decisions. So as part of the careers program, we've done a talk similar to this to your students. QT have been in to entertain us. They were all young student ambassadors currently studying at QUT. They spoke to your students about their pathways, how they got there, and there was lots of general things about current industry trends and lots of other interesting information. As Ms. Vosnax mentioned earlier, the students have done the My Future survey online where they've looked at their career possibilities based on their interests, skills and values. Obviously, as part of all this data that we're collecting, the students obviously will look at their Orwell results. Next week, the week after next, we will be off to the Careers Expo. We've heard from some HODs as well as the subject videos. The Year 10 QTAC guide, which isn't out yet, but it should be soon, and obviously there's other things like the TAFE and Schools Handbook. Lots of resources that your students are engaging with over the next term or so. A really exciting event which hopefully you have seen via your Q Parents permission, and those that aren't on Q Parents, hopefully your Year 10 student has brought home the permission note. But we're off next Thursday week, so Thursday the 12th, and we're meeting at school early, so we need everyone to be here on time, and we're heading off as a cohort on the buses to the Brisbane Convention and Exhibition Centre, where the Careers and Employment Expo will be, as well as the World Skills Expo. So the difference between the two, in the Careers Hall, that's going to be your universities, your TAFEs, your other private RTOs that Miss Doolan was talking about earlier, and where your student can ask as many questions as they like about anything there, obviously. And the World Skills is next door, and that's more of a vocational exhibition, and they'll have real life examples of, they'll have most likely a bricklaying person, they're laying bricks, and all sorts of interactive displays for the students to have a look at and again be involved in and ask questions. So that's a really exciting morning. And then we're actually heading off to QUT for a Gardens Point campus visit, and QUT are providing us with lunch. So another just important message there, if you do have dietaries, your student does have dietary requirements, we need to make sure those forms are in at least a week in advance so that we can cater for them. I've just added some photos from past Careers Expos. So obviously the Defence team are there, ADFA, lots and lots of interesting stalls for the kids to be engaged. So as Ms Vosnax mentioned, obviously all this is heading towards your student set plan, so their senior education and training plan. And during class time, your students will start to fill this out. So basically it's an ongoing plan that the students are encouraged to visit at any time. But it's putting down their ideas about where they think they might want to head post-school. Is it a traineeship? Is it an apprenticeship? Do they want to go to university? What they put in their set plan during class time this term is not set in concrete, okay? And they are in fact encouraged to go at any time and add to their set plan along the way. As mentioned, it's supposed to be an evolving document. So it is something that we involve you in as the parent or caregiver, and obviously as a school we conduct the set planning interview. Those interviews will be running in week 2 of next term, and it is important that all students do the set plan interview with us and with yourselves in attendance. So more information will be coming to hand about when bookings will open, and there'll be about a 20-minute time slot for you. We will run before and after school and obviously during the school day, so there should be plenty of opportunity for you to find a time that suits you. The last thing I wanted to talk to you about, part of my role, is just offering the students the many opportunities that are out there for industry. Obviously, work experience is always on the table. Now, we don't have a dedicated week in the timetable for work experience, but obviously that week for Year 10 is their active volunteering week. So they still get to go out in the work environment, but we encourage then, if students have a particular interest in something, they can still participate in work experience, but they're just doing that in the school holidays. And we as a school can help them facilitate that. All right, so obviously there's a process and students have been spoken to about that. They're covered by the school insurance via a work experience agreement form that must be completed before they attend any workplace. And that's the same with the volunteering that they're going out to do. Now, I put those things in red. It looks like I'm shouting at you. But I just want to make it really remind your young person to check the day map notices regularly. I have emails that come past my inbox every day. There are so many opportunities, but it's up to the kids to run with those. Okay, it's a big cohort. I'd like to think that we have a pretty good grasp on what all the kids want to do, but it is really up to them to take those opportunities and run with them. And for us there also, if I do send out, or senior schooling does send out a student survey, it's really important that the students complete those, because that's another way that we collect data about interests that they might have, so that in the event, and this is where my next slide comes up across, in the event that, for example, that middle photo there, the ABC sent an invitation to all the schools, which I jumped on, for us to participate in their first pilot program of work experience. Cara, the student that got selected to go based on her written application, she had completed one of the surveys that I'd sent out about the lunch and learn to say, what topics would you like to hear about? I did a quick scan. Oh, these are the kids that are interested in journalism. So not only did I put that notice on this student day map, I also sent it directly to those students, because they let me know via that survey that that's something that interests them. So that's why I really encourage students to fill out anything that comes their way via email, via the notices. Be involved as much as you can, because I can tell you there are opportunities out there. It's just up to you to take them and go running. The other two photos I've got up there, again, are of students basically taking those opportunities that come across. So we had two students that went out to Metro South Hospital, Metro West Hospital last holidays, and they did a radiography work experience week based on a guest speaker that we came in, and they networked with her after that and got her contact details and said, hey, can we come and do some work experience, and made it happen. And it's the same as the other one there. I've lost her name. Help me, Miss. Kate Ledez, again, was involved in a great networking opportunity there. Last thing, lunch and learns, like I said, lots of opportunities. Your student is invited to attend any of the lunch and learns that we have here at school. Basically, that is what it is. Bring your lunch and learn. We hold them once, sometimes twice a term, and it's straight out here in the A Block quadrangle. And we get industry experts in, and the students, pretty much, it's a Q&A. Okay, so they get to ask whatever question they would like to our professionals that are in on that day. So Year 10s, when I send out the survey at the end of this year to say who would you like for next year, make sure you fill that out for me. Try a trade day is another thing that happens. Look, there's just so much, I couldn't list them all. So please, please, please encourage your student to be actively involved in checking all that information, because it's very exciting about what they can get up to.
Thank you, Ms Fairbanks. Well, I hope that you guys leave here feeling that your student has got their own individual pathway that we will support. I hope you leave here feeling uplifted and supported, and that your student has got a really unique and individual pathway ahead of them. And that we will do everything we can to help them on that pathway. I've got our details up there. I've got Miss Smith just in the background loitering. It looks like she wants to talk. Lurking. So first of all, from me and from the senior schooling team, thank you for coming, but I'll hand over to Miss Smith now. Thank you.
I'm just wrapping up by saying a huge thank you to all the students, parents and carers who've come this evening. This is a pivotal part of your journey, and we're really excited that you're excited about learning more about that journey. Thank you also to anybody who wants to see the slides or watch the recording afterwards to get more information. I'm just giving a plug to the senior schooling team. This is actually a state award-winning team. I'd like to point out that they are the most knowledgeable experts in this field. They are deeply committed to personalizing a pathway for your student. So please reach out to them. Students, you know them well, go and talk to them. They will find something that you are truly excited about. We've also got Miss Black, Mr. Pilkington and Mr. Batty, who know your children very, very well, and they are there to support you in this journey. So thank you so much for coming along tonight, and thank you to our senior schooling team, as well as Mr. Duggan, for coming and making tonight's event possible. If you have any questions, please stick around, but otherwise, can you join with me in thanking our presenters this evening?